analyst. Hello everybody. Welcome to Women Lead. Hello to Rachel Heppinstall, who's my guest today.
Hi everybody.
Thank you all for joining us. I hope this is an enjoyable chat between myself and Rachel about leadership, about gender, about women in data, all of that good stuff. I'm very aware that my stream, my Wi-Fi is coming through a bit slow, so apologies for that. There's nothing I can do about it, sadly, but you'll get the gist anyway, hopefully, as we go along. Do post in the comments under the event any questions you've got for Rachel about what we're talking about, and let's get started, if that's okay, Rachel. I'll introduce you.
Thank you.
Rachel has been described by Women in Data when she won the 20 in Data and Tech Award 2025 very recently as visionary and a trailblazer. So no pressure there at all, no pressure. And she's worked in over 20 years in different sectors, focusing on tech and then mainly data and looking at data transformations, is massively passionate around the pipeline for getting women into data roles and up into the industry. And we'll talk more about that because, as Rachel's just said to me off camera, we start making stereotypes and assumptions about different sectors, different industries, and what somebody in a STEM job looks like from age of 3, which is astonishing. So we'll get into that as well. So let's get going. Rachel, my first question to you, as I've done with my other guests as well, because I'm really fascinated by this, is what was your first day in your first proper job like?
So it was a while ago now, guys. So it was reflecting back. So it was 27 years ago, and I was only 19. I'd finished my A-levels. I'd planned to go to uni. I decided I was going to take a year out to earn some money, and some personal circumstances had changed as well. So I got straight into quite an early career. And my first role was a customer service advisor, actually working for a large financial services organisation in Halifax. I'm sure you can all think what organisation that might be. And I was a customer service advisor. And I'll be brutally honest, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing on my first day. But I found it super intriguing. And I think, back at that time, I was quite fortunate actually in my first role in that my leadership line was all females. It wasn't a tech or data role; it was an operational role, and so I found that quite, interesting, and it really helped me in the fact that I think I had some really strong female leadership there in place from day one. But I felt, obviously, to start with, a little bit out of my depth, but soon learned the ropes. And, something that I tend to do is I'm very, very, very inquisitive. I like to challenge. I ask a lot of questions, and I'm a deliverer by heart, and I'm always looking at ways to improve things. So that was my first role. And I think back in the day as well, something that I can really remember is the power dressing that used to happen. On the female front, there were lots of ladies walking around with the suits, with the big shoulder pads, and because, and I do feel old now, back in the day, I guess when I reflect on it, I guess it was a way for them to stand out from the crowd. Maybe they were going into a board meeting that at that time would have been, holy male, and it was just their way of kind of standing out and, getting kind of that power behind them. Yeah, so they're kind of the snippets of things that I can remember from like 27 years ago.
And I think that's really honest of you to say, kind of like initially just felt out of your depth. I think we all feel like that at the start of any job. I think that kind of carries on in a way a lot of the time, but certainly in terms of those first jobs and being honest with yourself at the time to be the person to ask questions. I see it a lot with certainly the younger generation. I don't want to plonk everybody together, but certainly when I was working at the university, there was an unwillingness to ask questions. And I'm like you, I'm quite nosy and I want to find things out. And if I'll be honest, if I don't know something, I'll ask. So if students and graduates go into their first job thinking, actually, yes, it is okay to ask questions. You can't be expected to know everything straight away.
Absolutely. And I think when I reflect back, because I do ask a lot of questions and I am quite challenging, and I guess once I found my feet, I probably came across quite confident. And I think, when I reflect back, that actually then peers found that maybe a little bit threatening, and it wasn't meant to be. It was just my way of coming in and finding out and challenging the norm. And I think it's always important that you should challenge the norm, always look for ways to do things better, faster, cheaper. But, something again that I've learned over time is that managing that through in the right way too. I used to be really quite bolshy, years ago. And over time, I've learned to tailor that, depending on the audience, depending on the stakeholder. There's different ways of approaching, to get what you want. So yeah, definitely some big learnings. And when I talked to my daughter about my first job, because there's a lot of remote working now, isn't there, and working from home. But I also remember the pub lunches that we used to have, like Friday pub lunches and office Christmas parties, and none of that really happens now. Everyone's, working remotely and things.
And sometimes that's slightly for the better. I was just remembering a job of mine where the socializing was done in a not so salubrious venue, not a pub, somewhere that the male directors probably couldn't get away with hosting organization company events in now. So it's kind of like, it's good in a little way, but yeah, it's also you lose that element of it takes longer oftentimes to build that trust up with a team, because you're not interacting with each other on as many occasions and in person as well, like you say, rather than homeworking on Teams interminably. But then the other side of it is when organisations say, right, everybody back to work, back to the office, you end up just sitting in Teams calls all day and not talking to each other. So there seems to be, then there's a need for balance still, I think, definitely. In terms of leadership, so we're Rebel Women Lead, so let's get into kind of the nitty-gritty of you as a leader. How do you see yourself as having a unique leadership style? You were saying about kind of used to be quite bullshit, but have kind of tailored that a lot more in recent years. Curiosity, asking questions, are those things that still count as part of your leadership style now?
Absolutely, they do, but there's a time and a place. And, I think some of that comes in those one-to-one situations where, maybe you've built that relationship, or maybe you've got a really tough stakeholder and you just need to pull them to one side and have that real inquisitive and tough conversation with them. But would I say my style's unique? I'm not sure it's unique. I do have a style that I've matured and grown. over the years from many lessons learned, where I've done stuff like this completely wrong back in my younger days, and burned the grunt of of some odd complaints here and there back in my younger years. But I'd say my style is it's fun, because we spend so many hours at work, right, that if you're not going to have an element of fun and injecting an element of fun into the team, the deliverable, the project, the operation, whatever it is that you're doing, then it's gonna be dull. And I think ultimately, if you've got a bit of fun there, it drives performance, it drives that cross collaboration. So definitely fun, but challenging in the right way. And I'm a big believer in that. If you've got a vision, you need to build that culture around that vision, and you need to over communicate. And again, for me, it's about getting the right people on the bus and getting them driving in that same direction. And some people will choose to fall off that bus, and that's all right, because they might not be bought into that vision, or the role and expectations might not be for them, and that's fine. And they'll move on to a career somewhere else, or take a sideways into a different project, or whatever that might be. But massive believer in getting people on the bus, and understanding all the people that you're leading as well, from the top right down to the bottom. Trust is earned and respect is earned. And I'm a big believer, and I've proven this works, that if you have a team where there's mutual trust and there's mutual respect, then you can't go far wrong, and you will deliver successfully, as long as you're all aligned to that vision, and as long as you're all communicating, and you've got that open environment as well to be able to do that. So I'm not sure it's unique. I've seen other different leadership styles, some that are completely great with me and I would never do, and others that that do work equally as well. But I think it's about finding the one that works for you, because it needs to be natural too. You don't want to be forcing your leadership style and feeling really awkward and it coming across really odd.
And you see that a lot with managers that haven't had any training, that just kind of like rise in a company and just become managers, where you see kind of micromanagement, and as a team coach, I might go in and kind of like listen in on meetings where the manager's doing all the talking, nobody else is saying anything, and the manager's not seeing that as anything wrong. Whereas me as the coach, I'm like, whoa, we need to take a few steps back here. Clearly your team, like you said, trust and respect are earned over time. And clearly a lot of the time kind of managers seem to think that they'll just trust me because I'm the manager now, so I know what I'm doing. I was like, and that's not the case. That's not the case at all. That's how you have people being very silent in their opinions and then leaving ultimately as well.
Absolutely. And often some of those silent voices are the ones that impact the most and that you really need to hear. It's really important that you give airtime to everybody. And that might not be in a big team meeting for the introverts. It might be a one-to-one or just a corridor chat or whatever it might be. It's really, really important. And especially in the tech and data world, lots of introverts work in technology and data, because it's just, it's quite a technical, obviously, industry. And it's so important that everybody gets a voice.
So that comes back to what you're saying about kind of tailoring the communication as well. So as a leader, having as many different touch points for communication and in as many different ways as possible, that then gets everybody to feel included.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that. And I really liked your analogy of the bus, because it's an analogy I used in coaching and my coaching approach, in terms of like, I'm not, as a coach, I'm not getting on the bus with people, but I'm helping making sure they get on the right bus for them. So if they end up on your bus, which is the fun bus, fantastic. I love it. I love it. Do you think you've made any kind of unconventional choices, or not necessarily unconventional, but kind of different from what paths you see other people take, that you feel kind of help you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I think I alluded to it earlier, actually. And some people might see this as an inhibitor, but I absolutely don't. And I have found this quite difficult at times, actually, particularly working in technology and data, in that I don't have a university degree. I'm up to A level only, and that's through choice. So, you know, I planned to go to uni. I took a year out, and actually, personal circumstances changed, but actually also I was earning and learning at the same time. And, you know, even up to today, if I look at my peers who I was at college with or school with, who've gone on to further education, I've progressed further than probably 90% of than they have in their career. And so, you know, you could say that you know, is slightly, you know, unconventional. Would I do it any differently? Absolutely not. I am easily bored, I will admit, and I have to be constantly challenged. And I think the difference between earning and learning is that you can choose your career path and you can move your role, and, you know, you can move into a different industry or into a different role or department or whatever. And that's what I've done, to feel constantly challenged and kind of get to where I am today. Whereas, you know, I think if I'd have done a university degree, there'd be certain modules of that where I would have completely switched off and become really, really quite complacent. So for me, was definitely the right decision. Has it held me back? Absolutely not, because I'm very proactive and have been proactive in my career and kind of, you know, doing what I do today. Has it at times made me feel inadequate? Maybe, but not through fault of my own, through fault of peers that I've worked alongside, or managers that I've had above who, you know, who have PhDs or degrees or, you know, whatever it might be. But, you know, again, I think it's, again, down to diversity in the workplace as well. You know, I'm a massive believer that workplaces need to be diverse. And, you know, the more people that you have in your company that are from a diverse background, be it career, be it education, be it ethnicity, be it gender, be it whatever it is, I think, you know, that makes for a winning team. You know, so I'm quite happy with the background that I've, you know, that I've come from.
Yeah, I like that, because it's often what you said earlier about you haven't had any problems with not having a degree, but you've heard it from others. And I feel that way about kind of class and being a woman as well, but being working class and from still working class and from a working class background. It's like, actually, this isn't a me problem. It's somebody else's kind of perception, and I don't really need to worry about their perception of who I am or what background I come from. It's for me to kind of get champions around me and advocate for myself as well. So we were talking earlier outside of this about women in data and girls in data. For those who don't know, Women in Data, it's just a brilliant organisation that's grown and grown in the last few years. So it's not just an advocate for getting more women into data fields and careers. It's got a whole girls in data section around mentoring and a curriculum. It's very heavily now into women's health, which is how I came across it initially, particularly kind of around reproductive systems and endometriosis. For those who don't know, I'd shorten it to endo. I know quite a few people that do, and menopause and perimenopause and all that kind of thing. They've also got, and I'll put up a banner with their website, because they've also got a really cool, diverse jobs board. So if you're looking for work, you can have a look at that jobs board, whether you're a member or not. But I think it's also worth joining as a member if that's kind of like your field or the field that you're looking into going to. I think they're fabulous, and most people do as well. So getting into that, because I see them as kind of a core part of trying to implement radical industry change, which is one of my questions that I ask all of you. Sorry, this is me pressing buttons too much. Step away from the banner button, Susan. So in terms of kind of radical change, particularly in the data sector, so within tech, also really within data, what would you like to see in the field, and how can us, not just women leaders, but other leaders as well, kind of help drive those changes?
I can talk about this forever because there's so much more that we need to do, radical change that we need to do in this space. If I think about, where would I like this to go and what would I like to see? Radical change to me, the outcome of radical change to me in kind of the world of gender balance and equality would be a world where we no longer need women in data committees or women in leadership committees or women in tech committees, because we just don't need that, because the world is equal. There's pay parity, all gender is equal. We've got the uplift that we need in women having the confidence to understand a career in data, never mind apply for a data career, never mind climb through the maze and the ladder up to the top to be in a leadership role within data. I think my daughter's on somewhere, I hope she is, but it's the same for my daughter. She's an avid football player and she's part of a women in football committee, and it's the same in sport, right? So a radical a radical change to me would be where we don't even need to talk about this, Susan, because it's not a thing anymore. But we are a million miles away from being able to do that, and the stats on this are everywhere. If you go on the Women in Data website, it's stats galore. So if we think about women, early careers for women, for example, there's a recent study that's been done on A-level and university students, thousands of students, where only 27% of those students interviewed would even consider a role within a tech and data career. And only 3% of that 27% of those women would say it was their first choice. And I find that astounding, because I've worked in tech and data now for 20 years, and still now today, there's only 27% of those students that are even thinking about it. If you look at the roles they are thinking about as a female, it's the nurse, it's the doctor, it's all those stereotypical type roles still. And if you look at the roles that males are looking at that kind of age, you've got things like data scientists in there. Well, come on, God, if I was younger, I'd be going for a data scientist role, absolutely. So, I think it's really, really, really important. And one of the areas that I focus on as an ambassador for women in data is what Sue's mentioned earlier, girls in data. And the sooner that we can open the younger generation's eyes up to the possibilities that can come and the excitement that can come from a career in technology and data, the better. Because as Sue said earlier, from the age of 3, that's when gender bias and all the rest of the stuff starts to evolve within a girl or a boy's brain. So we've got to get in there as early as possible. Women in Data run a Girls in Data curriculum where we go out to schools at a really young age and colleges, and we start to talk to them about exciting stuff around data science and visualization off the back of Power BI and all of that great stuff. And there's some brilliant feedback that we get from that, but that's not enough. We've got to do more. We've got to get stuff into the actual curriculums, and we need more help in making that step change.
And computer science itself has kind of been minimised over the last few years, certainly in terms of secondary schools as well. So I'm just wondering if Women in Data, the organisation, have been involved in, because at the moment the government's doing a curriculum review of the entire national curriculum, and whether Women in Data or other organisations like it, Girls Who Code, that kind of thing, have put forward kind of their opinions of what needs to change certainly for secondary and FE.
Yeah, there will be, and we will be engaged in that. And the other area that women in data are really strong in as well is women's health, and we do a lot of work with Endometriosis UK, the NHS, other big medical bodies, because again, if there are any men on this session, by the way, and I really hope there are, I'm not anti-male at all. Many of my mentors are male, but the fact of the matter is that we live in a world that's built for men. And one of the most eye-opening books that I ever read was Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez. If Ellie, I've got it upstairs if you want to read it. Please read it, because it's such an eye-opener. I'll listen to the audiobook. And quite frankly, the stats within that book are really, really scary. And again, that's another initiative that Women in Data push along, around the lack of stats for women in women's health, which is why if you do unfortunately suffer with endometriosis, it takes 3 appointments at a doctor's surgery, a consultation, and then a number of appointments in a hospital. It takes approximately 3 to 10 years for you to get diagnosed with that really, really painful medical disease. And that is simply due to the lack of stats that we have in the NHS around the symptoms that women carry. And another stat straight out of the Invisible Women book, women are 47% more likely to be seriously injured in a car crash than men, because cars and seatbelts have been tested on the size and shape of a man's body. And so this is why it's really, really important that we all understand this, but more importantly that we work for that gender equality. We work to get those really important stats into out into the world, into the wider medical analysis, so that we can get parity for everything all over the place, and try and gradually alleviate those big gaps that we see across a number of different areas. Gender and women's health are just a couple of areas. There's a ton of stuff I could talk about this all day, and I won't. We'll do another session on it.
You managed to stop yourself then. I would have been like, yes, carry on talking, because we can talk about what's in Invisible Women forever. If for anybody that hasn't read Invisible Women or seen, I never get her surname quite right, Christina Chara Perez. I probably got that slightly wrong. So I saw her talk live last year as well. It's really interesting. She's got a very cute dog as well. But if you haven't read that book yet and want to read it, so if you go onto my website, on the resources page, I've got my bookshop.org, which is a lovely Amazon alternative, working with indie bookshops all over the country. Invisible Women's on that affiliate list, and also another book called Feminist City, which is all about making our built environment more inclusive, having benches that people can sit on, having walkable cities, all that kind of thing. So have a look on my website if you're interested in that, under the resources page. But yeah, I think a lot of us that have read Invisible Women, some parts we were kind of like, oh my goodness, we know this, but then it's seeing the data behind it where you're just blown away by it. Sorry, I've just had a couple of comments as well. I'll just pause for 2 seconds. Marion Shaw, hello Marion. I'm determined to get you on here, Marion. We'll try later on in the year, promise. And Isabel Clark, thanks for watching now. Coming to ensure I watch this in full later. That's a really good idea. Great work. Please add book name to comments. I will add the affiliate link for Invisible Women and Feminist City after this live, so I can't quite do it during the live at the same time. And Jag as well has just said, hi, great to see Rachel continuing to fly the flag for this. Love it. Oh, thank you all for your comments. Do keep commenting as we go along, please. I think it's that thing with data as well. It doesn't feel very sexy, does it? Kind of just even the word data. But working with volunteering with UN Women over the last few years as well, with their commission on the status of women and girls every year. It's kind of, you see how much data is what ends up kind of ruling our choices, ends up showing us, like you said, kind of like with car crashes and health and young people and their prospects for the future. Data is so important on kind of the macro and the micro scale. So I think it's brilliant that Girls in Data, with Women in Data, do so much work with school kids. You need to find a way to get into the early years nursery next, I think. If it's kind of like
maybe write a book. We could maybe write a book.
That's a really good idea. There is a organisation as well that Women in Data might want to get in touch with, that work with young people and schools, and it is the Gender Equality Collective. I had to think about that for a moment. It's basically got an education arm, who are also fantastic. Yeah. Another LinkedIn user just said, "Thanks for the great session, Rachel and Suze." Oh, blush, blush. You're very welcome. I'm going to take a little sip of my tea before I carry on. So looking at those, so those are kind of the radical changes, is that, you know, get them when they're young. It's the term, because that's when it all starts. That's when certainly girls kind of start seeing their future more in the caring industries, and we know that care is chronically economically, you know, overlooked and underpaid, certainly in the UK already. And also looking at, I mean, also could be looking at data in health. So it doesn't have to move away from the caring industries, but looking at how data can, you know, get behind some of the kind of big government choices that are made on a daily basis. Have them get made, you know, have them make those choices with us rather than for us, as the old saying goes. Okay, so let's talk about support systems. I'm aware we've got like 14 minutes left. 3 questions. We can do this. We can do this, Rachel. Is there anyone that's been instrumental in your journey, and in what ways have they helped you?
Yeah, there's a few people, but I'll pull out one. I'm not going to name names, but I will pull out one. My first strong female leader, which was in probably my 3rd or 4th role. I think I was a business analyst at the time, heading towards project management type stature, and I really looked up to her and admired her, and she was my line manager and mentor for a number of years. And she was definitely instrumental in helping me navigate my early career and understanding the importance of stakeholder management and networking, you know, all the softer skills that you kind of don't think about when you just get setting out on your career. You're just doing the task-based stuff, aren't you? And she really, really, really helped me and pushed me actually into my first big career move upwards. And I'll never forget, she bought, when I eventually left her wing and moved under a line management, she bought me a lovely little gift, and she bought me a card. And on this card there was a fridge magnet, and I did have it up until recently actually, and it says, "Dream your dreams a touch too big so you can grow into them." And I've always carried that with me for years, and I just thought that's a lovely saying. And I've always thought, you know, I think as a woman you doubt yourself. And you are, you know, I certainly was very underconfident for quite a number of years. Still have to push myself now. Still have a number of mentors and coaches when I need that push in the right direction and I'm doubting myself. And excuse me. And I think, you know, that I've carried that through with me to instill in my head to say, Rachel, you can do this. You don't have to stop here. You know, just because it's all men above you, you know, on the board or, you know, in the committee or whatever it might be, don't let that hold you back. You know, dream your dream bigger, you know, make space and just have that plan and that network around you to move into it. But, you know, aside from that, you know, the other networks I'd say would be those peers and people that work around you. You know, I always keep I'm not a techie by heart, you know, so I always keep the architects and the engineers really close, because, you know, I love their world and I really admire the work that they do, because I'm not technically minded enough to do that, and I'm not sure that I would want that as part of my career, but I absolutely love what they do. And so I always work with them and sit with them and figure out how they're doing things, and kind of take it on. And again, it's good to have that network, that other support blanket network. So if you're not quite sure how something fits together, they're just on the other end of the phone, because they're friends at that point. And, you know, so if you're asking a favour or you need to understand something, and it works both ways, if they're wanting a bit of help from you from a leadership perspective, or, you know, stakeholders, or, you know, how the bigger picture glues together from a strategic perspective, then you're there to help them as well. And I will quickly say family and close friends too. You can't forget your family and close friends as your support network.
Especially if your daughter's on the call as well.
Yeah, and I think my niece is on as well, so I thought I'd best quickly get that in. Who were both in the early stages of their careers as well, I will point out.
So you're a role model for them.
Well, I don't know. I'll ask them at the weekend. I don't know. I'd like
they
to
might
think
not admit to it.
I'd like to think I am, but yeah.
So I mean, there is research that says that women are over mentored and under championed, and I don't think I particularly agree with that, because I think women should be both. I think we are all deserving of having a good solid mentor in our lives, and having good champions that can champion us up in rooms that we can't get into at the moment, and having that support network inclusive of people who have very different skills from yourself as well.
Yeah.
And that kind of humbling thing of being able to kind of say, yeah, I don't know everything. I don't know how to do this. Can we work together on it? I'm assuming this is somebody you know, Rachel.
Oh, that's my lovely daughter. Thank you, Ellie.
Oh, Ellie, cheers for that.
I'll pay you later.
Yeah, 50 quid. Monzo me, 50 quid. Monzo her, 50 quid. So do you come across, or have you come across any kind of because I like Rebel Women Lead to kind of be part of cutting through the bullshit in terms of what you see or hear from other kind of leadership experts, very much in quotey fingers using that phrase. So are there any kind of big leadership myths or just bullshit that you've encountered as a woman leader? And if so, like, how would you combat those myths?
There's a couple of more general ones. I mean, I've got a ton of these, if I'm honest, and some of them I won't want to talk about on here, because
absolutely,
we're probably going a court case these days.
Let's anonymize people and situations.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of general stuff that previous leaders have said to me where I've fought back, or I've thought that's just bullshit. What on earth are you talking about? So one was actually when I fell pregnant with my daughter, Ellie. So Ellie was my first child, and I was at the outset of my what I deemed as my most exciting start of the career. I was a business analyst, and it was at the time when all Lean and Six Sigma was the buzzword. So we were out across the UK, across all the contact centres, and we were leaning processes, which I absolutely loved. That, yeah, absolutely used to love that. I did that for a few years. And so we were travelling the UK, and anyway, I fell pregnant. And I had the conversation with my line manager, who was a male, just to obviously to tell him. And my line upwards, they were all blokes. And I think they were talking about it in the management meeting. They must have been talking about it for a while. And then I came into what felt like quite an awkward one-to-one from my manager's point, where he was like, oh, well, you're not going to be able to go travelling in the UK now, are you? Well, I was only 12 weeks pregnant at the time. And I said, well, you know, my leg's not dropped off. Like, yeah, I mean, yeah, of course I can still get in the car and travel, you know, to Liverpool from Halifax or Newcastle, or, you know, come on, like, just because I've got a baby growing in me, my brain doesn't stop working. I can still talk, you know. So that was quite an interesting one. You know, and I think anyone who's starting out and, you know, who might be thinking about, you know, starting a young family, don't be put off. Don't, at the time I felt, oh, it's the end of my career. It absolutely isn't. It isn't, and you've got to manage that in the right way. And the other snippet I'll give is another male leader who I was in a one-to-one with him, and it was like, so I was saying, I really want to progress, you know, I really do want to get up the ladder, you know, let's do some personal development. What is it that I need to do? I'll be honest, this person wasn't the best line manager in the world. That would be my opinion at the time. But anyhow, this person's words to me were, if you really wish to progress, especially to my level, then never, ever, ever switch off from work. Well, if I never switched off from work, I wouldn't be where I am today. To get through life in general, I have to switch off from certain things, and work is one of them. So on a weekend, I go out in my camper van with my dog. I'll go to the pub with Ellie. I'll meditate. I'll go for a walk. I'll do some exercise. But my brain ultimately does switch off from work because I need to give it some downtime. And I just thought that was probably one of the worst pieces of leadership advice that I've ever been given.
And that in itself leads to burnout, leads to severe mental health issues for people.
Health, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So
there's a word advocate that, guys.
Oh, I hate both of those, but I love the kind of how you thought about it. If anybody's watching this or listening in and is pregnant and is having issues with their employer, I'll put it in the comments after this as well on the event comments. 2 companies that are really good in terms of advice: ACAS, ACAS. They're all employment lawyers. They are just ace at what they do. The usual, join your union if there is a union and it's a decent one, but also Pregnant and Then Screwed. Also a fantastic name for an organisation, and unfortunately needed, but also a really good organisation to talk to if you're in difficult situations when you get pregnant in the workplace. Because how very dare you want to walk outside at 12 weeks pregnant? I mean, that's also kind of like things like that, and leadership myths often come from where you've got too many of the same type of person in leadership roles. So they've not come across different people's life experience. Yeah, exactly. Just diversity that needs to come from the top all the way down to the bottom and back up again. The prime examples there of where that just hasn't happened twice. We are going to finish on, God, I'm going to have to tell my mum about that 12 weeks and no, you can't go travelling anymore. I think you can. Is there one piece of advice or a couple of pieces of advice that you would like to give to women who are aspiring to lead in their own way, or even advice where if people are looking at a career in data, where they can start? So, you know, first of all, absolutely don't be put off from a career in technology or data. Oh, hi, Sharon. And all these people that are messaging in. So, you know, don't be put off by any horror stories that you might hear there or anywhere. One of the first things I'd suggest, and I do get a lot of younger people reaching out to me about this, is just reach out to your network. So, you know, I am a mentor, by the way, if you know, and I'm happy to, I've got some spaces available if anyone needs any help with this kind of thing. But
if you can find somebody that you trust, admire, whatever, who works within the tech and data industry, and just have that real open dialogue and conversation with them about it. You know, I didn't set out in data. I've been specialising in data for 8 years. You know, and so I did a squiggly career and a jump from technology into data, and it's about networking and, you know, getting that advice and just understanding about what role is suitable for you at that time for you to make that sideways move or whatever it might be. But like I said before, dream your dream and go for it. Don't let anybody hold you back.
I love that. Dream your dream and go for it. Don't let anyone hold you back. Hold you back. Absolutely love that. If people want to, you said your offer, thank you, your kind offer there, being mentors to people. How do people go about that? Is that through Women in Data, or should they connect with you on LinkedIn? What do they need to do?
They should come to me via LinkedIn direct. Please, if you do, if either yourself or if there's somebody that you think could benefit from my mentorship, or else I may be able to put them in touch with somebody else as well if I feel like I'm not right for them.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Rachel. Oh, this was so nice.
Been a pleasure, Suze. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody that joined us. And as I said, I will make sure that all the kind of relevant links are into the comments section of this event. And it's been recorded within LinkedIn and YouTube, so you can share that if you want other people to sit and watch it, or if you want to watch it back as well. When you watch it back on LinkedIn, it fantastically comes up with closed captions as well, and occasionally censors my swearing and occasionally doesn't get my Essex accent quite right. So we'll see how it goes. But thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a fantastic day. We're going to end it there.